So, good afternoon, and the friends in the Dhamma. I'm very happy to be with you again at the University of Queensland. And today's topic that I have been given is Buddhism and women, or women in early Buddhism. So, when following a tradition of Buddhist teachings, it will be hard for me to the topic is quite vast, and so whatever that we can talk during this time, so I will explain to you, and only a few comments can be made on each of the following topics. So that's one, two. We'll go to two. The women's role during the ministry of the Buddha was seen in 4 different stages. First, as a mother, as a house minister, or wife. Because the name that the Buddha gave to a wife was Gruhaniya. That's a Sanskrit word, and Gruhaniya means, I couldn't find a similar word in English, but the best I could find was house minister, right? And then it's not housewife though. And an upasika, that's a female lay follower, and a female renouncer as bhikkhuni. So these 4 stages of can be seen in the Buddhist history. Number 3. So first I would briefly talk about the culture at the time in which Buddhism appeared. Next I will talk about the attitude of the Buddha to the women's role at different phases. How the Buddha placed each woman's role in their designated status, and the prominence each role had given in the Buddhist society. And show a few examples of some of the famous female figures from the past who had contributed enormously to the history of Buddhism, and also point out some research on current issues related to the female monastics. So I will give you some time to discuss once we finish the seminar, and then you can ask questions, and there'll be time for that. So first I'll be talking about the attitude towards women at the time of the Buddha. The main Indian religion during the Buddha's time was designated as Brahmanism and was distinguished as Hinduism as post-Buddhist development. The position of women under Hinduism was well described in the Manusmriti, which is a work of the Dhammasastra literature of India. It's called the Laws of the Manu, and it describes the duties of a woman as follows. By a girl, by a young woman, or even by an aged one, nothing must be done independently, even in her own house. In childhood, a female must be subject to her father. In youth, to her husband. When her lord is dead, to her sons. A woman must never be independent. So, no sacrifice, no vow, no fast must be performed by women, apart from their husbands. If a wife obeys her husband, she will, for that reason, be exalted in heaven. So that comes from the Laws of the Manu. Now, both Parshanatha and Jainism, both Parshanatha of Jainism and Gautama the Buddha, as non-Brahmic Protestant leaders, opened their doors with strict admissions to women to their monastic communities. Now, Therigatha, they are called the palms of the sisters, alone provides evidence to show that hundreds and hundreds of women found solace in Buddhism and preferred their spiritual pursuits under the Buddha. The Buddha proclaimed a message that was universal to all human beings. One of the 9 classic titles given to the Buddha is Satta Deva Manusanam. That means the leader of gods and humans. a one who could lead all beings. The Buddha's teaching was designed to the happiness of humanity of all beings, without exemption from one's caste, creed, race, age, distance they lived, disability, or gender. The Buddha taught Dhamma to both men and women equally. He also gave talks to the householders and wives. The Buddha unhesitantly accepted that women are capable of realizing the truth, just as men. The highest achievement of Buddhism, the supreme enlightenment, is available to both men and women. During the Buddhist epoch, there was a change in the attitudes towards women. The traditional structure and functions of society underwent some alterations, as Mrs. I.B. Horner describes in Woman, under primitive Buddhism, that women came to enjoy more equality and great respect and authority than ever. Their position in the activities in domestic, social and religious began to improve. And Anguttara Nikaya shows that as a result of the freedom, the women said to have fine examples in conduct and intelligence. Women no longer became intolerable and degradable. Women were well acknowledged at last to be capable of working as a constructive force in the society of the day. The Buddha addressed the Vajjis. Vajjis are a ruling clan in Vaishali in India. And the Buddha taught them the 7 downfalls of a man. And it's called Sapta Aparihana Dharma in Pali. He then advised the Vajjis to respect and honor young girls and women, and to place them well in society and not to keep them under men's custody. In a society which considered that male children to be more desirable than female ones, when King Kosala was worried when he had a daughter, went to the Buddha and asked, I have a daughter, and he was quite worried about that. But the Buddha had a different view. When Queen Mallika had given birth to a daughter, the Buddha's advice to the king, to Pasenadi Kosala, was that a girl may prove even a better offspring than a boy. This clearly shows that Buddhism does not consider birth of a daughter as a cause for worry and despair. So now let us see the place for the mother in Buddhism. As for the Buddhist, mother is the highest symbol of respect in the home. The Buddha himself set the first example by paying the highest respect to his foster mother when Mahaprajapati Theri passed away, by taking part in the funeral procession. This was the first time that the Buddha participated in a funeral. Motherhood in early Buddhism could also be valued actively in its own right. Queen Mahamaya, the mother of the Buddha, Queen Prajapati Gautami, who was his foster mother, Yashodhara, the wife of Prince Siddhartha, are regarded the most valued and respected mother roles in the history of Buddhism. Buddhist teachings value family as the most important human association for the formation and socialization of the infant. The image of the mother as the embodiment of compassion is used a lot. The woman as the mother had always commanded such veneration and gratitude, and her position was unassailable. Women were almost invariably mentioned and listed first in the early Indian literature, Sanskrit, Pali and Jain, and this was after the Buddha attained enlightenment. Sigalovada Sutra in Digha Nikaya deals with the code of conduct for the laity. There are 5 duties parents are to perform towards their children, and vice versa. No other leader than the Buddha used highest words to elicit the qualities of the parents. The Buddha declared, Brahmati Mata Pitaro, Pubba Chariyechi Uttare. The parents are Brahma, God, and also our teachers. Brahma is believed to have 4 noble qualities, as in the Brahma Viharas, which is stated in Brahma Vihara Sutra in Anguttara Nikaya. They are also called the 4 divine abodes. namely loving kindness, compassion, appreciating joy, and equanimity. Parents maintain these qualities towards their children throughout all different events of life, from the moment of conception onwards. In the Sigalovada Sutra, Buddha advised his followers to widen these feelings and to apply them all. Similar qualities are elaborated in the Mangala Sutra, which shows Mata Pitu Upattanam Etam Mangalam Uttamam, that helping and supporting the parents is one of the great 38 blessings. The Buddha often used the phrase Mata Mitta Sake Gare, treat your mother as a close friend and give a prominent place in the family. In another place, Buddha described parents as the main life supporters, protectors, feeders, and teach you how to enter into the world. One reason for honoring the motherhood in Buddhism is that there are 5 kinds of suffering unique to women. In Majjhima Nikaya and also in Avenika Dukkha Sutra in Matugama Samyukta describe these as menstruation, pregnancy, childbirth, leaving for her own family to live with her husband and in-laws and to wait upon a man. Now this was said during the Buddhist time because during that time the women didn't go out to work. So most of them worked in the fields either with their husbands, those who couldn't afford to live. So those people with financial difficulties, they went to the fields or they worked in homes. Then they did a sutra that a birth of a child would give support to a mother to get out of the male dominance in her home and move forward in the society. So next we are going to talk about Buddhist woman as a wife and a house minister or Gruhaniya. The influence of Buddhism on the place of women in society as a whole in Sri Lanka is demonstrated in both the Deepavamsa and Mahavamsa. Hugh Boyd, visiting the Candian court in 1784, remarked, "The Sinhalese women are not merely the slaves and mistresses, but in many companions and friends of husbands." Similar records are available on the position of women in Burma, Thailand and Tibet, where women participate freely as equals in economic, social and religious activities of the community. In Buddha's words, a virtuous wife was considered to be one who led the good life. A good laywoman endowed with religious devotion, moral virtue and liberality as well as wisdom and learning, and is given to charity, makes success of her life in this very existence, according to Samyukta Nikaya. The Sigalovada Sutra in the Digha Nikaya describes the respect that one is expected to give to one's spouse. In 5 ways should a wife, as the Western direction, be respected by a husband: by honoring, not disrespecting, being faithful, sharing authority, and by giving gifts. And the wife so respected reciprocates with compassion in 5 ways: by being well organized, being kindly disposed to the in-laws and household workers, being faithful, looking after the household goods, and being skillful and diligent in all duties. In the statement of Isariya Vogassana, the Buddha meant to hand over the household administration or leadership to the wife. The Ugraha Sutra in the Anguttara Nikaya explains more details about the ideal relationship of the husband and wife in order to keep domestic peace and harmony. Swansa Sutra in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha announces 4 types of marriages and how a husband and wife should keep their relationships and marriage ties together. The best tie of a relationship, stated, is when the husband and the wife live according to the virtues of a god and goddess. The Buddha reassures Nakula Mata and Nakula Pita that if both the husband and the wife expresses the longing to be together, not only here and now, but in the future state also, both of them should be in the same level in regard to their belief, their ethical conduct, their generosity and wisdom. In these respects, I.B. Horner, in Woman, explains that in these respects, therefore, a woman may be equal of a man. In Mallika Sutra, in Samyutta Nikaya, Queen Mallika, the wife of King Kosala, once asked the Buddha, why some women are beautiful, others plain, some rich, others poor. The Buddha explains that if a woman be ill-tempered and irritable, jealous and slow to give alms, such a one becomes poor and of ill favor. Whenever she may happen to be born, a woman, however, who never becomes angry or agitated, even under the great provocation, and is generous, such a one becomes beautiful, famous, rich. And this is stated in Anguttara Nikaya. Mallika declares her determination for the future to be gentle in temper, never revengeful or harboring a grudge, but always amiable and generous. There were high expectations in the role of a wife. In the list given in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha describes 7 wives when advising the daughter of Anathapindika, Sujata, she was called Sujata, who had been a difficult woman at that time. The Buddha asked which kind of wife she falls into. And it is said that Sujata changed her attitudes from then on. The wives are described as, the first 3 types are destined for unhappiness, which are destructive wives, thievish wife, and domineering wife, while the last 4, as they are imbued with long-term self-control, are destined to be happy. The latter wives are characterized as caretakers, motherly wife as she should be for her son, and then compassionate wife, friendly wife or companion wife, and submissive wife, like the sister wife, as she would be for her older brother. The Buddha endorsed a variety of types of wives within marriage and emphasized the higher virtues, values and conduct that was expected by them in order to keep husband and wife in place. If all goes well, then the wife is called the comrade supreme, and a number of devoted couples are mentioned in the Pali Canon, such as Queen Mallika and King Pasenadi, Nakula Mata and Nakula Pita, and Dhammadinna and Visakha, stated in Women in Early Buddhist Literature by I.B. Horner. Nakula Mata and Nakula Pita were considered by the Buddha to be the most eminent among his lay disciples, or their close companionships with one another, and they were matched in their faith in their teaching, their self-control and affectionate way in which they spoke to one another. In the family, both husbands and wives are expected to share equal responsibility and discharge their duties with equal dedication. The husband is admonished to consider the wife a friend, a companion, a partner. In family matters, the wife was expected to be a substitute for the husband when the husband happened to be indisposed. In fact, a wife was expected even to acquaint herself with the trade, business or industries in which the husband engaged, so that she would be in position to manage his affairs in his absence, and shows the fact that in the Buddhist society, the wife administered the role as the house minister. However, since the ideal of early Buddhism is renunciation, it can be seen from examples such as the story of Nanda, Buddha's stepbrother, his wife Janapada Kalyani, that striving for the bliss of nirvana is valued above love and marriage. Despite having married her just that day, encouraged by his cousin Buddha, Nanda left his wife to become a bhikkhu in the order of Sangha. In stories like this from the Pali canon shows that nirvana is generally perceived above love. Buddhist women as upasikas. Upasikas are like lay people. The Anguttara Nikaya describes the 5 qualities of Buddhist lay follower. What are those 5 qualities? A lay follower, upasaka, upasika, who has 5 qualities as a jewel of a lay follower, is like a lotus. What are the 3-5 qualities? He or she has faith, is virtuous, and is not superstitious, believes in action, that's karma, and does not believe in luck or omen, does not seek outside of the order. Upasaka and upasikas are also called Shravakas and Shravikas, are householders and other lay persons who take refuge in the 3 jewels. The 3 jewels, the Buddha, his teachings and the Dhamma, and practice the 5 precepts. So women are often the main upholders and supporters of a religion. Women are known as the pillars of strength to Buddhism, and this was certainly so with Buddhism when it was widely spreading. And up to today, women are more prevalent in all activities in Buddhist temples. The first woman to become lay disciples by the formula of the Holy Triad was the mother and the former wife of Vyasa. Visakha Upasika, an intelligent, pious woman, became the Buddha's great benefactress, supported the Buddha and the Sangha in great many ways. A model female lay devotee endowed with unwavering confidence in the Triple Gem, she was securely settled in the fruit of stream entry at the age of 7. Visakha, Chulla Subhadra, Queen Mallika, Samavati, Kuchuttara, Matika Mata, Uttara, Sujata Supya, Suppavasa, Katyanan, Nakula Mata and Kali were some of the eminent female lay disciples who were placed at great upasikas and were well praised by the Buddha. Now, just like Buddha's great disciples, female disciples, Buddha also had great upasikas in his ministry. So these were the names that's been given. So the attitude of the Buddha to the role of woman was an enlightened one. And therefore, Velukantaki Nandamata and Kujuttara, who had reached higher fruits in the path, were the most eminent upasikas the Buddha showed as the role models of the lay followers. The Dhammapada Attuva denotes that Samavati, Kujuttara, Matika Mata and Uttara were some of the highly praised women for their wisdom by the Buddha. The woman in the Bhikkhuni Sangha. The establishment of the Bhikkhuni order is considered as something revolutionary in the religious history. The Buddha called all members of humanity from all walks of life to come together to form a new order. He advocated that all females and males look alike, shave the head, go for alms, and wear the robes, and wear no different adornments. And they had to be followed by, these rules had to be followed by everyone, declaring that a member of either gender is equally capable of achieving the highest spiritual attainments. The Buddha gave similar positions to both genders of the outstanding achievers in the Sangha community, naming them Agra Mahashravikas and Shravakas. The Buddha concedes to Venerable Ananda that women having taken to the life of Pabbajja, which is ordination, in Buddhism, are capable of attaining the higher fruits of religious life as far as arahatship. And these, it was stated in Anguttara Nikaya, and these considerations would have weighted heavy in the mind of the Buddha. But in the interest of the collective good of the institution of Brahmacharya, which was the core of the religion, women had to make certain sacrifices, surrendering at times to their legitimate rights. This was evident from the 8 conditions under which the Buddha granted them permission to enter the order. The 8 revered conditions, because we have no time, I think. Do you want me to go through the 8 revered conditions? No. The 8 revered conditions have been the focus of much debate between scholars and between practitioners because of its conditions association with the subordination of nuns to monks in Buddhism. Many scholars and practitioners argue that the impact of the subordination meant that women would never be leaders in life for the whole community or have any decisive voice in what they say. Bhikkhu Analeo states that 8 Garudhammas also differ from all other rules in the Vinaya in that they are not laid down in response to something that has happened. Instead, they are pronounced in advance. In sum, the 8 principles to be respected are not rules per se. Instead, they are recommendations, and it comes from the Journal of Buddhist Ethics. Then Bhikkhuni Kusuma, she states that these conditions did not conform to context that generally gave rise to Vinaya regulations, and she states in inaccuracies. She further argues that the conditions were unknown at the time of the first establishment of the Bhikkhuni Sangha in Sri Lanka in the 3rd century BC. Then Vijayaratna in Buddhist Nuns explains that the conditions appear to reflect the historical and social context of gender expectations. He affirms that the conditions were established in order to protect the community of nuns. The case doesn't end there. The Buddha had mentioned to Venerable Ananda, if women had gone forth in this doctrine and discipline, the pure doctrine would last only 1,000 years. But since they have gone forth, it will only last for 500 years. Could this be the real words of the Buddha? This expression can be interpreted in several ways. Some scholars think that this is an expression of regret by the Buddha. Others see it as an attitude foreign to the Buddha's thought, and that misogynist monks added to the text. From the doctrinal point of view, a Buddha cannot feel regret. The mental states of hindrances such as regret about the past and being worried about the future, etc., does not arise in Buddha. The Buddha would have simply wanted to say that if nuns did not act correctly, the duration of his teaching would last only as half long. The community of nuns was created by the Buddha under difficult conditions. As such, the organization had to be carefully protected by future generations. In this dialogue, finally the Buddha states to Venerable Ananda that he gave the 8 important conditions to avoid this curtailing of the duration of the religious life. Now, impact of Garudhamma. Many Theravadi Buddhist leaders believe that the Garudhammas were installed to keep the distance from both groups in the clergy. The Buddha repeatedly advised the bhikkhus, explaining that it is a common norm for both men and women to be always attracted to the physical appearance of each other. And this is stated in the sutra called Sangyojana or bondage in Anguttara Nikaya. The subordinate role of the monks could help both monastics to look at each other in a more respectful and conscientious manner, and Garudhammas would have designed to avoid obstacles to the life of renunciation, as any form of affection is an obstacle to the path of liberation. In the Pahankanuwa Dhamma talks, a renowned, well-learned senior monk from Sri Lanka, Venerable Katukurunde Jnanananda Himi says, every clash, problem among human beings is originated from misinterpretation of the language. People just grab the words but do not sense or take the real meaning. So we argue, fight, misunderstandings arrive, and eventually end up in a war. Wrong thinking and speech becomes the most powerful weapons. The first female ordination. The first female request for ordination came from Queen Yashodhara. When the Buddha first visited Kapilavastu, his hometown, on behalf of the invitation of his relatives, Yashodhara expressed her desire to join the order. The Buddha disapproved her request by remaining silent. It is stated that from the day Yashodhara came to know about Prince Siddhartha's renunciation, she had followed Buddha's way of life by wearing yellow robes and having one meal a day, by lying on low couches and giving up garlands and scents. So even after having had the 8 conditions imposed upon Prajapati Gautami, she became the gateway for the spread of nuns in Buddhism. Deri Mahaprajapati Gautami proved to the world that women also had the same or equal capabilities as men to attain enlightenment, the highest known position in Buddhism. This goes to show that Mahaprajapati Theri broke that cycle and paved the way for women to be seen as leaders among the equity. The Buddha constantly reminded us, as long as the sasana consisting of bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, upasaka, upasika persists, the Dhamma will remain. We need to constantly remind ourselves about this, and they are called the fourfold Sangha. There are concerns about resuscitating the Bhikkhuni order. The dominant opinion amongst the Sangha in Theravada countries is that there is no possibility to resuscitating the Bhikkhuni order. The validity of the dual ordination carried out at the Buddha Gaya concerns uncertainty whether the Bhikkhuni lineage has been passed on without interruptions in China, and whether the Mahayana Bhikkhunis can represent as Theravada Bhikkhunis as their tradition and practice differ from the Theravada tradition. Bhikkhu Analayo, from the revival of Bhikkhuni order and the decline of the Sasana, points out that however the same uncertainty applies equally to Bhikkhu lineages in South and Southeast Asia, since it is in principle impossible to provide positive proof that the transmission has always been passed in an unbroken manner. Then Kiffer Pal's Journal of Buddhist Ethics, from Journal of Buddhist Ethics, argues that it is difficult and if not impossible for any of the existing traditions to authenticate both points. Venerable Ajahn Brahmanso Mahathero argues that at first the Lord Buddha gave the bhikkhus authority to ordain bhikkhunis. Later the Buddha gave authority for bhikkhunis to be ordained by dual ordination ceremony, first in a sangha of bhikkhunis and then in a sangha of bhikkhus. However, in contrast with the history of the bhikkhu ordination, where one finds that whatever a new ordination is allowed by the Lord Buddha, then the previous method is immediately abolished. The original ordination of bhikkhunis by bhikkhus was not abolished by the Lord Buddha. So this then is a strong argument for the legitimacy of ordination of bhikkhunis by bhikkhus alone. Can sexism produce karma? That's a bit controversial one. Okay. Because of the male supremacy endemic to Buddhism, the karma of sexism is healthy and strong in certain countries, such as Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Only some communities in Sri Lanka ordain women. Elsewhere in Southeast, ordination of women is illegal. Nuns in Southeast Asian countries are neglected and ill-served by their tradition. Many do not get prerequisites to survive, and because of their inferiority, low status. And this has led to use money to attend to their requisites, which is against the monastic discipline. We cannot generalize that all Theravada monks are against supporting female renouncers. At present, there are very compassionate and progressive monks and Nayaka Theros to be found amongst the Theravada tradition. When there are 10 precept Silmatas. It is worthwhile to mention that there is a considerable number of Sri Lankan 10 precept Silmatas who have kept their tradition for the last 100 years. They are well-educated, experienced and disciplined nuns with more than 25 to 50 years in ordination who give meditation instructions and attend to Buddhist teachings in certain centers. There are clashes between both groups when junior bhikkhunis try to show that they are superior to them or vice versa. Bhikkhu Analeo in Journal of Buddhist Ethics points out good statement that a substantial number prefer to remain in their present settings. One problem is that their whole social relationship network with other nuns is based on the principle of seniority, which on taking bhikkhuni ordination will have to be restructured according to seniority in higher ordination. According to Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha expected his Sangha community to be competent, have self-confidence, be well learned, be upholders of the Dhamma, practitioners of the Dhamma, be followers of the Dhamma and illuminate the community. Whether they be bhikkhunis or silmatas, there is an urgent necessity to educate and support the female renouncers who are already in the order, who wishes to enter the order, to leave the worldly life. The need of a recognition and involvement of the senior Buddhist authorities, the government bodies and the wider community is vital in promoting peace and harmony. This could enhance the inferiority status of the women and foster self-esteem among those female followers that could speed up their spiritual development and attainments. They should be provided with opportunities to take leadership roles that would benefit the wider society at large, without being desperate, keeping in subordinate conditions or in inferior situations. When these conditions are supported and met, more educated, visionary and enlightened nuns could be visioned in the female Sangha community. His Holiness the Dalai Lama contributes greatly to the empowering of women. He speaks at the Lions Club at Dharmashala in India, claiming that education alone is not sufficient. Educating only the brain is not enough. Education of warm-heartedness is important. Women should take an active role in the peacemaking. Empowerment of women is very important. I give my full support. I always feel for other people. 21st century is a century for dialogue. Proper way to build peace is we must make an effort to solve peace through meaningful dialogue and paying respect to others' interests. At present, there is ample opportunity for the women to be engaged in the Buddhist practice as upasikas. The enlightenment can come within upasikas as well, and there are no restrictions to it if one is ambitious. However, renunciation allows one to get away from the worldly life to enjoy the freedom and speed up the attainments to reach high goals in the spiritual path. When a female follower attains the fruit of arahatship, she automatically becomes a theri or bhikkhuni. When the lay disciples Bahya Daruchirya and the minister Santati became arahants and passed away, the Buddha announced them as bhikkhu samana. So one is called Sangha when anyone in the fourfold Sangha attains the noble eightfold path, irrespective of the gender. Now I will be discussing about the community of nuns of the old. The community of nuns of the old continued to prosper for many centuries. According to Anguttara Nikaya, it records a list of famous nuns who were fully awakened Buddhist nuns and leading female disciples. They were well known and profound in different domains, thus assisted the ministry of the Buddha in the elimination of the Dhamma. For example, Mahaprajapati Theri, the chief of the Bhikkhuni order, broke the cycle and paved the way for women to be seen as leaders along with equity. Khema and Uppalavanna Theris became the two chief nuns of the Buddha. Theri Khema was the foremost among the nuns who possessed great wisdom, and Theri Uppalavanna became the highest bhikkhuni amongst all, who performed miracles using the astral body. Theri Bhaddakachayana, Yashodhara, was foremost among the nuns who attained supernormal knowledge. Theri Patachara was foremost among the other nuns with regard to knowledge on the code of discipline. And Theri Nanda was foremost among the nuns who developed their mind. Theri Sona was foremost in right effort. Bhadra Kapilani Theri was foremost in the ability to recollect past lives. Theri Sigalaka Mata was almost among the ones in faith. Theri Kisa Gautami had the ability to wear rough robes. Theri Khema, Theri Kanjangala, Theri Vijita, Theri Sukha, Theri Dhammadina were well known for their ability to preach. Many of these nuns attained arahatship with the four analytical knowledge and endowed with wisdom. Theri Suppa, ordained under Theri Dhammadina, was an eminent bhikkhuni endowed with wisdom and supernormal powers. Because of her special ability to preach, many followers became delighted and interested in listening to her Dhamma preaching, which made them to enter the order. Bhikkhuni Dhammadina was one such bhikkhuni the Buddha praised with high regards for her knowledge of Dhamma. She was placed as foremost in preaching the Dhamma among other nuns. A higher praise was given to Yashodhara Devi for her fidelity to the Buddha by protection, faithfulness, devotion shown in her previous births, and her stories are illustrated in Pujavaliya. These bhikkhunis had spent their entire lives for the welfare and happiness of the people in the communities they lived. Bhikkhuni lineage in Sri Lanka. According to Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa, during the reign of King Asoka, in the 3rd BC, Arahat Sanghamitta Theri with a group of bhikkhunis brought the bhikkhuni ordination lineage from India to Sri Lanka and established the bhikkhuni order. Dipavamsa states, Theri Sanghamitta was learned and wise and was endowed with her 6 supernatural faculties. Prince Aritya, together with the 500 high-born illustrious virgins at the royal court, those companions who surrounded Queen Anula, were free from passion and stayed fast. All received the Pabbajja ordination, and all these persons attained arahatship and full perfection in the doctrine of Jina. The Buddhist female leaders like Vihara Mahadevi, Soma Devi, Sugala Devi, Ahalepula Kumari Hami appeared in Sri Lanka because of her great sacrifice, unflagging devotion, unassuming courage she gave for the moral, intellectual and spiritual upliftment for the well-being and happiness of the people and the womanfold of Sri Lanka. Arahat Theri Sanghamitta was a true spiritual successor of Prajapati Gautami, Yashodhara, Dhammadina and thousands of other Arahat Theris, such as the community of nuns of the old, continued to prosper for many centuries. It took well over 500 years and appears to have disappeared at some time around the 11th century due to political disruptions and various invasions. Entire monastic community in India and Sri Lanka had disappeared. Only the Bhikkhu order was re-established from Burma. Even though the Bhikkhuni lineage disappeared due to political and social infractions, the Bhikkhu lineage survived Sri Lanka during the 1st century. The Theravada leading Bhikkhus preserved the Dhamma discoursed by the Buddha and scripted them on ola leaves, which was previously being preserved by memory. This important event decided the future of the Theravada Buddhism. As Buddhists, we owe them our deepest gratitude. To conclude this program, let us look at each role nominated to the woman by the Buddha. Each woman's role during the ministry of the Buddha was seen as a mother, a wife, a housewife, as upasika and a bhikkhuni. These roles were well discussed and documented. The Buddha gave the highest embodiment of respect to the mother. Then he placed the wife in the leadership role and requested her to develop the Buddhist virtues by recognizing that those values and virtues persisted in a mother has the potential to change the home environment to a virtuous family life. For example, Buddha's great eminent female lay followers like Visakha and Chula Subhadra married husbands from other religious traditions. They were both convinced by Visakha and Chula Subhadra's behavior and moral conduct and led their families and later both husbands to become pious Buddhists. Later Visakha was called Migara Mata, meaning Migara, the father-in-law's mother. Queen Mallika was another female disciple who encouraged and supported her husband King Kosala to live by the virtues. The Buddha placed the roles of mother and father as Brahma, who believed to have 4 noble qualities. As for the Upasika or female lay followers, the Buddha emphasized that Dhamma was neutral with respect to gender and that the best role model of woman was an enlightened one. The role of each woman in society placed by the Buddha is an admirable one. No such human being has given such a place for womanfold in the human history. Hence the title given to the Buddha, Satta Deva Manusanam, the leader of all human beings, was well rehearsed in the discussion. Regarding the bhikkhunis and silmatas, there is freedom for one to choose the path. However, in the present day, the respect for women expected by the Buddha seems to have disappeared. The values and the respect that reciprocals each other as human beings also appear to be declining. The position of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, such as the approval of a higher order, remains unresolved and unsupported, and as such, the decision remains with the senior Mahasangha. If such consideration is granted through kindness and compassion, it could resolve human rights in the modern day we live and could positively support to the elimination of the inferior to low status of the female monastics. For the past 2,600 years, we have been reading, writing and appreciating the works of the nuns who lived in the past. In a country like Sri Lanka, where so many enlightened beings flourished, the Bhikkhuni order declined. This is enough to show our negligence that is coming from our communities. Empowering women, empowering and improving the conditions of the female Sangha communities was felt important to improve their inferior subordinate low status. We have not heard of a recently enlightened nun other than Ma Chika from Thailand, but the stories of the bhikkhus have been many. Whether this debate should take another 2,500 years is not known. The doctrine of the Buddhist teachings immersed through meditation activities are important conditions towards the attainment of the fruits of the path. Merely teaching the previous system of education does not seem to pave the way to enlightenment. Once the supportive conditions are met, in future we will see skilled and disciplined, educated and cultured, visionary and enlightened female monastics who will live by the teachings of the Buddha and be an excellent example for generations to come. Undoubtedly, such a group will be a beacon of inspiration for other females to follow the path of the Buddha, as the Buddha investigated. Then we can see visioned and enlightened female monastics who can contribute to the society and to the history of the 21st century. To conclude, Let this Dhamma propagation be a tribute to my Dhamma teachers and the lay supporters who diligently inspired and reinforced me to develop the path to Nirvana. Let this be a tribute to the thousands of bhikkhus, bhikkhunis and nuns for the past and the disciples of the Buddha who sacrificed so much to hand this tradition down from 2600 years ago. I hope that the exploring of the poems composed by Arahat bhikkhunis or enlightened Buddhist nuns of the old would spring much inspirations to the contemporary Buddhists. The canonical texts reflect the role women played in the conceptualization of Buddhism. As such, Buddhism dignifies them by recording and remembering their spiritual achievements. I finally wish you all be well, happy and peaceful. May the teachings of the Buddha guide you and bless you with peace that lead to Nirvana. I also would like to acknowledge and pass merits of the good thoughts and deeds that we generated today to all our listeners, to the Organization of Buddhist Association of the University of Queensland, to the Organization of the Multi-Faith Center, the President Jacob Wu and Secretary Jacqueline Rogers for organizing, and all our students who are present for making this event a success, and to Tushari Tilakaratna for assisting me in organizing the slide presentation. May you all be happy, well, peaceful, and may the teachings of the Buddha guide you and bless you with peace, leading to Nirvana. I hope we have some time for some questions.